Hello, men. This is Man. We are in trouble.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Man, We're in Trouble podcast. I am here today with Carlos, Alex, Ed, Kevin, and today we're going to get into a very, maybe slightly controversial topic. Gonna get right into it. So bottom line, guys, let's go answering one by one. And before we get into the full-on discussion of this, because I want to hear your guys' perspective first, and then we'll talk through that. So bottom line, what is your male perspective of gender roles and expectations? What the fuck? What is that?
Spit it out.
All right, I'm going to start from scratch. Hold on.
All right.
Blech.
No pressure, Mitch. I'm sorry.
You're having a conversation, bro.
I know.
3, 2, 1. Action.
Hey, fellas, is it gay to talk to your homies? Sorry,
we
that
make
wasn't
him
my
so
cue.
nervous. Oh my god.
My gosh.
You're so
Stop it.
giddy. Hello, everyone. This is Man. Hombre, estamos en problema. Hoy tenemos a Mitch, Kevin, Alex, and Charles.
Charles? For English, press 1.
Oh, you made that racist. Way to go.
For Japanese, press 3. Konnichiwa.
Oh,
Canceled.
tra, blah,
おい、私は
piff.
日本人です。All right. All right, welcome everybody. This is episode 10. We are finally at 10 episodes of the Man, We're in Trouble podcast. Today, I am here with Ed, Kevin, Alex, Carlos, and of course, my name is Mitch. Today, we're going over a slightly controversial topic. And before we actually get through the whole, before we start conversing and debating, I don't know if we're going to debate. Yeah, no, this is a debate one. We're going to be answering these questions first, one by one, before we move into the full-on discussion. So, guys, what is your male perspective of gender roles and expectations from men and women? What do you think the current problems are with gender roles, and what do you think are your solutions? Do you have solutions? And if you don't have any, that's okay. And why do you think there are problems in the first place? Take from your lived experiences, and how do you think this has changed throughout your lifetime? And I would like to have Ed. Can you go first?
All right, go one by one.
Go one by one? Who's number
With
one?
the questions, please.
One by one. All right.
Yes. Brain, short.
What is your perspective of gender roles and the expectations of both men and women?
From what I understand, like gender roles are these things that we've assigned ourselves as men and women in society. I've tried doing a little bit of research on tonight's topic. I've read examples of cultures that do things exactly like we do it in the West, and I've read examples of cultures that flip the gender roles completely different. So I think we can probably come to the conclusion that that we assign them to ourselves. So, at least in the Western society, or like where we live now, my perception of our current gender roles now gravitates somewhere around the woman being the nurturer, the caregiver, the man being the provider, the protector, or like that's what I see perpetuated in our society today.
Okay. Do you think that is correct? Or do you think there's current problems with that specific gender role, like stereotype? And do you think there are problems with it?
I don't think it's right or wrong. I think it's wrong to just blindly pin it on all of us. Um, I think it's right if you have a conversation with the other person and you determine that that's what works best for you. I don't agree with the idea that I can go up to a woman that I don't know and tell her she needs to do X, Y, and Z just because she's a woman. I agree with the idea that I can sit down with her and we can establish what she expects from me and I expect from her. So I think the problem with it is that the expectations are set up for us by somebody else being society as a whole. Do I have an answer? I think my best solution, which I've kind of been advocating since the first episode, is we got to listen to each other. And I think this is where my slightly more controversial answer would come in is we're listening to the rhetoric from the woman's perspective with feminism. But from my point of view, I don't see a willingness to listen back from our perspective. And the solution requires both of us to listen and sit down and talk.
All right, and really quick, do you think it has changed? Has in your experience, has gender roles changed in the past 30 years?
I think I grew up in a very traditionally minded Hispanic family, and what I've seen is I'm only 34, so what I've seen is women liberating themselves from, or pushing a movement to liberate themselves from their gender roles and expectations, which is a good thing. But my perception is we've kind of been left by the wayside outside of this conversation, which I think is part of the current problem.
Fair. Okay, thank you. Kevin, would you like to go by one?
Yes.
All right. What is your perspective of gender roles currently and your expectations from both? What are your expectations of that of men and women?
Well, I think gender roles were culturally assigned to maximize the survival of a community. And you can see the gender role for most of the developed world are fairly consistent, where man is there to fight, to protect, to provide, and women are usually delegated for nurturing, childbearing, teaching, like nurturing roles. And I think the issue now is that a lot of these culturally assigned roles probably seems outdated, and people are starting to have the conversation, and they're asking why on both sides. And definitely more on I would say more on the female side, because I still think in today's climate, most of the traditional gender roles for male are still pretty consistent across cultures, across borders. And I think what Ed mentioned about, on the female side, when they question these gender roles and they're not kind of listening to the other side, I think that's where the friction comes in. And another thing is, I think the men's side, we don't have the luxury to question our gender roles, because in today's society, the male side, where we still have the burden of maintaining and protecting a society. So the second a society changes that role, I think it becomes vulnerable, and it gets weakened. So I think those are probably the main issues that we're facing today.
Do you have a possible solution to that problem? Or what would you like to see? I think that would be, so here, I think this is a complex question because you might not have a solution, and I guess I should probably clarify it with everybody, but like what would you like to see? Because I think that is what you're envisioning to solve the problem. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but
Definitely more education and more empathy towards both sides, because any issues we talk about, there are, you know, issues on both sides. Like parental rights, like the dad obviously wants to say in it, right? And obviously the mom side has her own issues. So I think any issues that we have today, there's two sides of the coin. So that's why the rhetoric is so fierce in the mainstream, because I think the red pill only focuses on the guy's side, and the far left only focuses on the right side, and they just put all the blame onto the other gender, and we're just in this vicious cycle, and nobody gets anywhere.
okay. And really quick, in your experience in the last 30 years, 34 years, has it changed in your lifetime, do you think?
It has, I think. Just from my personal, this is purely anecdotal. I think from, at least in my dating experience, like the Hollywood idea of femininity has been I guess has been lessened with modern girls. Does that make sense?
No. What do you mean?
Like being soft and agreeable. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. That's just from my general experience.
You're saying that is what it is now, or what it has been, or
Like the idealistic vision of a woman,
being okay, so you think Hollywood in general, the idealistic vision of a woman is soft and
right,
dainty type. Is that's how it's changed, or
like that version
always
has
been?
seems to be on the decline from my
Got it.
personal experience.
Oh, okay, got it. All right,
Ideal, I think.
got it. Okay, Alex, do you want me to repeat the questions?
Sure, why not?
All right, what is your male perspective of gender roles and expectations of both men and women?
I don't know if I'm going to have what one might consider a typical male perspective on gender
Sure.
roles.
So, yep,
Pardon
you're a
me real
guy.
quick.
That's your
I'm a
perspective.
guy. I'm a dude. But yeah, I over my life, my position on this has certainly changed quite a bit. I guess I'll start out by saying that gender is not biological. I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. It's not necessarily purely imagination, or it's not purely imaginary, but it's not biologically determined. What we consider gender is a set of socially constructed and assigned roles and characteristics that people of a specified presentation are expected to perform. It's all a performance. I think that the source of this comes from the way that our society organizes itself. The dominant way in which society organizes itself and mediates the lives of and relationships between people within that society. Gender also is different between societies. It's very important to note that part. In American society, what constitutes masculinity and femininity is very different from what you might find in other cultures. And this is, over time, the concept of gender has changed quite a bit. And even today, with contemporary societies, the concept of gender differs depending on the society. So I do agree with a point that Kevin made, that there does seem to be a lot of consistency across borders today. I think a lot of those actually came about as a product of colonization. If you look at a lot of the pre-colonial societies within India, within Africa, within what we call the Americas today, both North and South America, the concept of gender does not exist now, or, as it does now. So, and also important to point out that there are still societies today that have vastly different sort of expectations when it comes to gender. So that's sort of my opening into what gender is. Now, within our society, I think that good, bad, or indifferent, there are a set of expectations that we have, that we collectively kind of push onto, men and to women. For men, that is to be the breadwinner, the caretaker, the provider, the defender. I can't think of
And
any
the
other.
enforcer. I think
Yeah,
that's
and
very
an
important.
enforcer. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point. Thanks, Kevin. And then women are expected to be nurturers. They are expected to be caretakers. They are expected to be more emotional, softer. When we say to be more feminine, that means to be more delicate, to be softer, to be, as that one meme goes, cutesy and demure. I think
Mhm.
if you haven't heard that one, it was a TikTok trend for some time. But
Yes.
yeah, I do think that our society currently does have those expectations. And those expectations harm everybody. The expectations of men to act and perform a certain way harm men in very, very significant psychological and physical ways. Just the same as those expectations also, harm women. We have different expectations, but I think we all do suffer at the end of the day from those. Um, Now, as far as how to change that, my own belief is that we we would have to abolish the current way that we organize our society, i.e., under capitalism. We would have to abolish that sort of way of organizing our entire society to then be able to move beyond what what we think of as gender today, because all of our gender relations grow out of the way in which, capitalism ultimately dictates all of our choices in life, all of our um, relationships to each other, where we live, how we live, so on and so forth. But that's very, very surface level. I'm not going to go deeper because that's going to take like a 5-hour discussion.
Yeah.
Now, to the question that I think might be coming on, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, is have I seen it change over my lifetime?
Yeah.
I definitely have. I know that, my own perspective on gender and my way of performing my gender has definitely changed. But also, the ways in which men, in media and film and, um, m- I'm trying to think of all the different ways, all of these different types of media that I saw when I was younger. The depiction of what constitutes manliness, masculinity has definitely changed. I think I've also seen that. We've probably all seen that within our own social relationships, whether that's romantic or even our platonic friendships with others. And I I personally think it has been for the better, but it has been a messy process, and we're still not fully there yet. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. I really look forward to this discussion. I think
Mhm.
there's probably going to be some heated moments, but I want to let everyone know here at the outset that I want to go into this with good faith, and I'm not here to attack anyone's ideas, beliefs, opinions, so on and so forth. But in return, I do ask that people hear me out. My own ideas, my positions are informed by learning from people who, within the transgender experience and community. I'm not myself trans, but people near and dear to me are, and I have learned an incredible amount from them. Who better to try to break down and deconstruct what gender means than somebody who is trans, somebody who was told at birth, you are to behave this one way for your entire life. And that didn't fit them. And so they rejected that. And then they had to go from, the way that they were perceived, the way that they were raised, all of these different factors, deconstruct it, and then put forth their own interpretation of gender for however they choose to present. And so I think that there's no better person to ask about what masculinity is than, a transmasculine person who has seen, I guess you could say, sort of the both sides of it, and has to navigate that. And the same for women, for a trans woman raised and socialized in a certain way to then seek to express themselves truly. Who better to try to understand what the concept of the socially constructed feminine ideal is than to talk to a trans woman? So yeah, that's what I have to say.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Alex. Carlos, gave you at least 20 minutes to prepare. Are you ready?
Last but not least,
Yes.
I'm not ready. I need another minute. No, I'm just kidding.
What is your perspective on, as a male, gender roles and expectations from men and women?
Yeah. So yeah, I may just end up keeping this more surface level. I'm not going to get so much into the defining gender and what society has up to, because I honestly don't think
keep it surface level.
Yeah, I don't think I'm honestly even know enough about it to even talk intelligibly. But as far as from my perspective, what I've experienced, I think gender roles has become it's mutating. Obviously, it's changing over time, and it needs to be tailored to specific families and households. I don't think gender roles is ever going to be this like Mitch, I know that you like Star Trek, right? Star Trek, everything is very equal. It's never going to become that, right? And then it's also not going to always be on the opposite spectrum of that, which is like, no, I'm the man, I rule the house, and you are the woman, you will cook, right? So we're going through this shift where now both sides are seen as equals, and there's still a lag as far as it's lagging as far as adapting and getting away from the traditional gender roles. So now you need to basically, let's say in relationships, you need to go into it already knowing what either side, what their core beliefs are. And those people need to pair up and match, right? So if their core beliefs don't match, then it's going to be, it's just going to be a constant fight, right? So I personally believe, and this is what's worked for me, that going into, so in the relationship setting, let's say, there really isn't gender roles per se. So currently my current relationship, what's working out is very much, there is no real gender specific role. It's very 50-50. We're both contributors. We both work. We both, right. So in that sense, it just needs to be a conversation. It needs to be, hey, we both have equal amounts of responsibility, and we both provide just as much. So this needs to be just an agreement that like we're gonna both do X, Y, and Z, both give our 100%, right? In that sense. As far as gender roles in a parental aspect, I personally, so growing up from my personal experience, it was very much a traditional traditional aspect, right? Is, masculine father, feminine mother, and whatnot. But I don't think that that currently applies to our current society because there are men that are more, that have a little more of a feminine touch, if you will, right? To them. They're a little bit softer, a little bit more caring. There are women that are a little bit rougher around the edges, right? And I've seen those different types of relationships actually work pretty well together. It's just that conversation needs to be had. Okay, who's going to take what role? So I think gender does need to be taken out of the equation completely. I just don't think we're quite there yet because we're still very much heavily leaning towards the woman is a homemaker and takes care of anything at home and anything child, right? Um, but because of how quickly society adapted towards accepting women in their workforce and expecting just as much out of them, I don't think the expectations as far as genders have caught up to that quite yet. So, solution, currently, I think the conversation just needs to be had. So if you are a, you know, hardcore patriarch, like you're all about, hey, I want to be I want to provide, I want to be the breadwinner, I want to stay at home wife that's going to take care of the kids, do the dishes, do everything. Okay. Well, you need to make sure that whoever you're getting with has that exact same belief set. And that person's not going to feel forced into that, and vice versa. So right now, the only fix really is just having that talk. As a society overall, I don't know how to move away from it altogether, other than giving it more time. And that's what I've seen works for me. Sure. I don't know if that answers all the questions, but
No, it does. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mitch,
right,
you're the
Ed.
last one.
Ask me.
Yeah.
I agree with a little bit of everybody. And I know that's kind of a scapegoat. Okay. No, I thought about this all day. This is a very challenging question because, like Carlos said, yes, do I love Star Trek and do I want that potential like idealistic society? Yes. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, everyone is the same in the Star Trek universe, too, because I do think in reality, we don't do ourselves a service saying that everyone can do the same thing as everybody else. There are strengths and weaknesses that everyone has. However, and I kept it very broad for a reason, is because I do think that some women are stronger than men in some things and vice versa. There might be some men that are stronger in being more empathetic and emotional maturity than some women. Yes, I do think that traditionally the stereotype of men are like what Kevin has said, in the sense of like being the stronger one, being the defense, being the one to defend, being one to provide, so on and so forth, with the girl being the nurturer, the caregiver, the homemaker, and whatnot. However, I 100% believe that is completely dependent on the couple, based like what Carlos said. The problem that we have in society right now, you have some people that are completely immovable when it comes to what they perceive gender roles to be. You have one side thinking it is only men and women doing this, and this, doing what they traditionally believe is set in a specific religious text. And that's it. It can't be anything else. Then you have the other side that says, oh, everyone can do everything because everyone is human, blah, blah, blah. I also think that that is disingenuous in the sense of, like, in reality, there are some people that are stronger in some things than others. And so you have to be okay with a guy doing those traditional gender roles. You have to be okay with a girl doing those traditional gender roles. And you have to be okay with other people doing what they want to do too. I I think that is the current problem that we have. Other people think, or people think that their way is the only way, and they are not okay with other people doing something different. And I think the solution is to get over yourself in saying that other people can live their lives the way that they want based on what they believe their specific gender role is in their specific family. And I think that is the possible solution to this. But I get it. That might be slightly controversial, but I think people need to realize that not everyone is as progressive as some people, while some people are not as traditional as others. And so we need to realize and have it be okay that not everyone is going to have the same opinion as yourself.
How do you perceive these have changed over time from your lived experience?
So my parents definitely, I think, is a more traditional role. My dad was in the military. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I grew up, I think, in a very traditional family of what is conceived to be a traditional family. But now, with my current situation, my wife works full time. Yes, it's stay at home, but she works. Our son goes to daycare. I do think that has gotten more normal in that sense of both husband, wife, spouse, and spouse working at the same time, being able to financially afford the things that we currently live in. Things are more expensive. Both spouses might have to work. People want to travel more. People see social media more and want to go out and do more things. And so I think that has evolved. I think guys...
Can I ask you a personal question? How do you guys split expenses?
Okay. Well, we can go into that because we're gonna go into it. I was gonna answer that later on,
Yeah.
but I can answer it right now. So we split everything almost 50-50. So I'm glad that she is working because we have separate bank accounts. So at first we were debating on having joint bank accounts or not. She was previously married, and that they did have a joint bank account, and I believe her ex spent a lot of money, got a lot of debt. She didn't want to have to deal with that. I was like, all right, cool. I don't have to use my money necessarily to spend the things that she wants. So she has her own money to spend on the things that she wants. I have my money to spend on the things that I want. We have a conversation for housing. So the house that we currently live in, I'm the only one that's on the mortgage, and I'm the only one that's paying for it. I did that for a reason, because the next house, she will be the only one in the mortgage and paying for that, so that she can build up her equity and getting investments and stuff like that. The other reason too was like, just in case something happens, like we wanted the ability to not overburden ourselves on debt to the point where we have to pay for a house with both of our finances, just in case something were to happen. So from a strategic standpoint, that's why we're keeping things separate. We can only live in a house that one of our salaries can afford, just in case something happens.
I think
That's fair.
But yeah, everything else for credit cards, everything is split down the middle. We have a credit card that is joint for both of us, and then we have our two. So I have like 3 credit cards. One's for the business, one's for my own personal purchases only, and the other one is for our joint purchases.
I think you bring up a good point between your wife working and Alex mentioning our economic reality, that we kind of been forced, whether we like it or not, into this position by virtue of the fact that even if hypothetically speaking, we wanted to keep traditional gender roles, we can't afford to.
Mhm.
So even the people that
Sure.
want to maintain that status quo in gender norms, it's
Yeah.
incredibly hard to do so. So we've been put in a position where the woman has to go back to work. And I was just, I was just reading about World War II because I'm a nerd like that. And one of the things that that they bring up is while most of the men were drafted and went to war, the women ran the factories, and society kind of figured out they can do everything just fine. They can build bombers, bullets, planes, everything. And then when the war ended, all the men came back and were like, all right, sweetheart, good job. Here's a slap in the ass. Get back in the kitchen and let me get my job back. And it almost seems like the modern
So what was the
wave
woman's
started then.
reaction?
In
Well-
World War II, after World War II?
It's like, did they want to stay in the factory, or did they like, oh, I tried this and I don't like it. I'd rather stay at home and be in the kitchen.
the overwhelming majority of women did um appreciate and like that newfound, how do I say, like personal agency, like the ability to go out and go to work and earn a living. Because when we look at it from the burden of the provider as a man, like, yeah, it does have its negative connotations, but women were also for the first time seeing the positives of having personal agency. I want to go to work so I can provide for myself, get the things I need, and they got a taste of something that I feel every human being should have the right to have through that personal agency. I wanted also to jump into what I thought were, because you started talking about the main problems of the general discussion today.
Yeah.
I think the two biggest things, and you guys can tell me how you feel about that, is from a men's perspective, I don't think men as a whole disagree that I don't think men think it's unfair for women to free themselves from some of their roles, but we're still being held to a lot of ours. The biggest elephant in the room being the provider role. By and large, that one still pretty much permeates in the back of the majority of men. And the other, and this one's one that obviously we're working out, is the old school way of doing things as far as woman stays at home, man provides, the woman, the caregiver, man, the enforcer, quote unquote, it worked. It was one formula. The world agreed to this. It worked. And then I think we convinced ourselves into thinking that that was the only way things worked. And now we're starting to realize we can have healthy intersexual or man-woman relations in other permutations of the same roles. If you know what I mean.
So
just
I have a question.
because the traditional gender roles work doesn't mean that it's the only way things work, is what I'm trying to say.
Here's
Hold on. I have a quick question. Do you guys want to go back to the tradition? If money were no option, you were the only one working, do you want to go back to traditional gender roles? Do you like it?
To what
Here's
degree?
my take on it is, okay, so you're taking money out of the equation.
Take money out of the equation. Do you want to be the only one that goes to work? Wife stays at home, takes care of the kids. That's
I don't want to
one
work.
element.
Who wants to work?
What?
Who wants to work?
Yeah, exactly. At that point, it's who's
Like
working.
we're only working to provide. If money's not a
But
Yeah.
that's the question though. Like everyone's like, oh, patriarchal way is the only traditional gender role is the only way for guys to work, and guys complain about girls wanting to go work. But yet at the same time, I think some guys are like, wait a second, I don't want to work. Like so that's the question.
I don't think guys are complaining about. Sorry, go ahead. You haven't spoken yet.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's very good. No, I don't. Yeah, like what you were about to say. I don't think guys have been complaining about, women working per se. I mean, in some subgroups, there are, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah,
there are.
I have seen, but I don't think that's the majority. I
There's-
think
The loud
where-
majority, the loud minority right now want guys to be the only ones to be able to be the breadwinner, the provider, the protector. They want women not to work. That's what I perceived it as.
There's a
That's
section
yeah,
of the right-wing church that really tries
Yeah,
to
and
use the
those-
Bible as justification for that.
right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and those are, again, they're just a loud minority, which kind of drowns out everybody else.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I just
But-
don't think that is the actual. I don't think that that's what the world, or actually even just narrow it down to a nation, us as a country as a whole actually believes.
well, okay, then
Uh,
do you want to be the defender? Do you want to be the provider? Do you want to always be considered that? Because everyone's like, oh, feminism's like bad and doing a lot of toxic stuff. The opposite is, okay, do you want to be the one that is always like that? And maybe a lot of guys are. A lot of guys want to be considered the defender, the protector, the homemade, the breadwinner, blah blah blah. But I think when people really like start thinking about that, hey, feminism's gone, women are going back to the home, doing that kind of stuff. The guys need to then stand up and do traditional roles all the time. Do people want that? Do you think guys actually want that?
I don't
No.
think it's a want issue. It's like we have to,
Why?
right?
Why?
What do you mean why? If we don't do
why?
it, everybody dies.
Why? How so?
If we don't protect our borders, if we don't maintain the infrastructures, if we don't provide for our families,
No, I get that. That's how I'm saying. Like going back to traditional. No. I think misunderstanding. the
When you
question.
mean the defender, the protector, you mean you're upstairs in bed, weird noise at night. Do you find purpose in grabbing the shotgun and the flip-flops and going downstairs?
or do you tell your wife to go check it out, honey?
No. I will go do that because
That sounds like a gender role.
What is your feeling about it? Like, do you agree with it? Do you find purpose
agree
in
with
it?
it.
Do you?
Okay, so here's the thing. I agree with it. I'm okay with it because that's who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Like that's
I was gonna say-
that's me. Like
to
there
my
might
point
be
earlier.
there might be
Oh,
other
sorry.
guys though that don't feel that way.
Well, here's what I
Is that
think
okay?
gender roles is not 100% cultural. Part of it is biological. Because you can see gender roles in the animal kingdom. Right? So they don't have culture,
I
I don't think.
No, I
So
agree.
I think part of it is just coding in our DNA. And I think society perpetuate these gender roles, kind of the same reason. I mean, I see a lot of parallel with gender roles and religion. It's a unifying force to organize a society. Like
For what
Rome, I mean,
For-
Rome is a good example. They have many religions. There was always civil wars. There was always conflict. So the emperor decided to, hey, we're only gonna practice Christianity now. And then they became the greatest, like everybody got on board. Everybody had the same playbook and they became the greatest civilization in history. I think gender role was kind of used in the same manner, is to make sure everybody was on the same page and maximize, I guess, the power and survivability of a society.
No, that's fair. All right, real quick. I missed. Sorry, my bad. All right, I missed this. Alex, you had a point that you would like to make.
Yeah. Okay. So real quick on the topic of animal kingdom gender roles, I am not going to speak to any sort of internal animal ideas about what gender constitutes because I am not an animal. I don't think like them. I don't think any of us can really truly understand that. Um, but I want to point out one example is lions. Um, a lot of these sort of what we would consider to be innate biological roles performed by men in human society with lions. um, Male lions literally lay around all day except when it's time to breed, and they get it on, like I think it's like 50 times a day when it's time for breeding with the female lions, and otherwise they just sit around. They do perform a protection sort of role with their like roars, and they will get into fights and territorial spats, so on and so forth. But female lions are the ones that do the hunting, they raise the children, they do a lot of fighting as well. And then there are also within nature, there are cases where female lions um, will grow manes and will sort of start taking over some of the, I guess, traditional, so to speak, perceived roles of what the male lions do.
But those are
And
outliers. Can you agree?
I, whether
But
or
I
not
mean,
they're,
also for I'm sorry, for the male line, for them to get to the point where they can just sit around and breed, they have to kill a lot of things to get to that point, right? They have to become the dominant pride in whatever territory. Like they don't just get born, they grow up, and they can sit around and fuck all day. Like a lot of young lions don't get there because they're killed while trying to get there.
well, yeah, I mean,
So,
that's the animal kingdom writ large. Is there's a lot of
right.
attrition, if you will, of younger animals because as they grow, it's they're caught up in whatever circumstances, and a lot of them die, for sure. And yeah, I definitely agree that it's not they don't just exist in a vacuum and then suddenly are put in into the position of laying around and fucking all day. But I like there are examples, and there's better science going into studying this, how people, you look at a distance, you think that's a male lion, turns out that's a female lion that's fulfilling a lot of these roles that we thought were traditional male lion roles. And I guess to my point, it's not necessarily super clear that all of the once perceived male lions are actually male lions. So it's just an example that there is deviation, there is change from that sort of norm that we think of. And then
Yeah, the big problem with I feel like the big problem with using animal kingdom analogies, regardless of the species, is that you're removing agency from the human, because we have consciousness, we can, or we have cognition that they don't. We can adjust our, we basically assigned our roles in a way to ourselves. Like nobody,
No, but we still have biological urges.
we
That's
have
not,
yes,
Yeah.
but we also have biological differences that
but it's like a
would have,
biological urge for men to protect. Would you agree? When
Yes, but I
like,
think there's going to be differences where, let's say, back to the scenario where, you're upstairs, here's something downstairs. Yeah, I guess most of the time it's going to be the man that's going to have the tendency to go down and check it out, right? But that can change. Let's say you're married to fucking Ronda Rousey, right? And you know that she can knock somebody out with one punch. Like, damn straight, I'm going to expect Ronda Rousey to go downstairs and check what that noise is because I don't know how to fight worth a shit. So it's just like,
yeah,
but
like,
I feel like most men would still have the urge to be like, I'm
well,
gonna be the big
hold on.
giant
yeah,
at Ronda.
The other angle of
yeah,
this is like back in the day, let's say, if we lived in ye old timey castle and going downstairs meant grabbing the sword, okay, I might be more physically larger and more imposing than my partner. it might be beneficial for both of us for me to grab the sword. Today, she can pull a 9mm Glock trigger just as easily as I can. So these roles have
You're muted.
changed and evolved with time.
Right.
And that's kind of like, now going back to Mitch's original question where he said, okay, in my case, would I be the one going downstairs? Yes. I also think I would argue that some men do find satisfaction and purpose in embracing their half of the equation of the gender roles. I don't think that aspect specifically is a bad thing, especially if the person they're with agrees with it and embraces their half of the equation.
Yeah,
I think
think
the problem is when there's not an agreement and
Yeah.
you both are sitting in bed going, fuck you, you go downstairs.
Yeah. I think it's disingenuous to say that women are not also protectors in their own right. I think it's disingenuous to say that like women are also not capable of doing the same things that men are. Because yes, are we traditionally stronger? Sure. But at the same time, I've seen some really strong women that destroy me in deadlifting, in just working out in general. So I think it's like it's possible.
Right, but we're saying kind of the general
Sure.
consensus. There
Right,
will
right, no.
always be
Right.
outliers.
Correct. No. I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree that generally speaking, it is 100% true that like there's stereotypes for a reason. There's traditional like these gender roles I do think are important for a reason. That being said, forcing someone to do something that they are not that they want to do, that they are capable of doing, and telling them no is also something that's bad. Like to tell a woman that no, you can't do this, you're not strong enough. I think that's disingenuous. Telling a guy, no, you can't take care of the baby because you're not the nurturing person that I am, is also equally as disingenuous. Like there are guys that are 100% capable of taking care
Who's
of the
telling
baby.
guys that they can't take care of babies?
I
think
think
overall
it
society.
was a
So these are-
generalization of like it's a generalization of like no. It's more. I mean, maternal. It's maternal, like being.
Oh, you mean like a daycare? People are like, oh, there's a guy that works here. Like that's like weird. Is that what you mean?
That like arguably women get the kids in the divorce, like that type of stuff. Like I think it's more like to say that men aren't also equally capable of being a good parent. Like I think that's an argument that a lot of guys I think have nowadays, and I think it's disingenuous though
Well,
to
I mean,
say
data
that.
has proven that to be false. Single fatherhood versus like single mom,
What
and
what part
based
is
on the
false?
outcome of the kid,
What part is false?
that men are not capable of raising a child.
No, I right. I agree.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that though it's disingenuous to have on both sides to say the opposite person is incapable of doing what is traditionally the opposite gender role throughout history because of perceived stereotypes and what we think traditional gender roles are. Does that make sense? Like it's disingenuous to tell the other person you can't do that, even though they're fully capable of doing it.
So I think it goes back to having that conversation, right, with your partner and or whoever you end up with. So again, it goes back to having that conversation and adapting or kind of setting parameters for how to maximize success within your household and your relationship, right? So let's say that you both have a job. Uh, Mitch, let's just use an example. I don't know. Let's say you were making $50,000 a year, and Kenzie actually makes $1 million a year because she's a neurosurgeon, whatever. Insert random job. So you can't there's no way you'll expect her to drop that job just because you want to take on the role as a provider. And
Some guys do, though.
but some
some
guys do.
guys-
So that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
think there needs to be a way to work around that. But
I
don't
think
know. I
society
personally
also
have never
ingrains it
met-
in us because I've personally met somebody who makes more money than her husband, and she has shared with us that he feels he has like feelings of
Isolated.
inadequacy. Yeah, because he doesn't feel like he's the provider.
And I
And
think that's, yeah.
I don't think that he's a bad person for having those feelings. I think that that shows us that society ingrains that shit in the back of your head.
It's learned.
Yeah.
Regardless, again,
I-
right, wrong, or indifferent, society up to this point has led to him feeling that way. That is the factual statement. We can talk about what we want, but the fact is, society, as we are organized currently, contributed to him arriving at that conclusion.
So that would
There's-
be, though, a conversation that the girl, the wife, should have with her husband. And a guy, I honestly think, needs to have the emotional maturity to be able to have that conversation with your spouse and say, hey, I feel inadequate for XYZ reason. The spouse should come back and say, you're not inadequate because of XYZ reason. And if
I don't
that doesn't,
disagree. I don't
But-
disagree. I don't disagree at all. But I'll say this. I think that is very perfect world rose-colored glasses
sure, yes.
talk. So, and we're also looking at everything from the perspective of an established relationship. So, what do you tell a guy who's single and out dating? Like, for example, I mentioned earlier, we as men can't
Yeah.
seem to shake the gender role of providers. So we've had conversations about dating apps, and we have the expectation of paying on the first date, for example.
Yeah. So I think Raphael interviewed a few girls that said that they don't care about how much he makes, right? So you're now saying that how do we convince guys to not care about making less, correct? Or like, what can they do to make themselves feel more adequate? And in my opinion, I think you could be like, hey, have a personality to make her laugh. Show her that you actually care. Granted, I know it's not traditional gender role. Be okay with not having the traditional gender role of making a lot of money. But okay, maybe that's
I
not a
don't
good answer,
disagree.
but-
I don't disagree.
I think
But these are very rose-colored glasses answers.
this is one of the
Yeah.
big reasons that the red pill has attracted a lot of people, because everybody's saying, we have now evolved past gender roles, right? We should be equal and have that conversation. But when in reality, I know every single girl I have dated expected me to pay the bill. So
What
in
we're
reality,
saying,
it's not the case. That's why the guys are confused. Like, wait, I thought we have evolved past this expectation stuff, but how
So-
come she doesn't want to go on a second date because I asked to split the bill?
How much money is she making though? Do girls that are making a lot of money?
I
Also
think
ask
I
them to
think
raise-
that's a little. I think that's just mildly irrelevant. Just because what I think the overarching the elephant in the room is men feel like women say they want one thing, and the data shows the opposite. And what I mean by that is,
This is
I
the
believe
reason.
when a woman says that she doesn't care about a guy's finances, I believe her, because she probably means that when she meets like a genuinely decent guy, they can work past that if there's a genuine, honest connection. But in the dating landscape that we have now, that's not a healthy dating landscape at all. As we've established how dating apps and all that has just distorted dating. That's not the words are not the reality. You're finding guys who are told, well, you need to take me to like a X amount of star restaurant. The guys that interviewed Raphael had a girl on who said any guy she dated had to pay her $100 to pay for a babysitter for her to go on a date with her. I mean, I'm
So
sure
then
this is
I
an
would-
outlier and an extreme, but what I'm saying
Yeah.
is,
I would come back and be like, hey, or is there something that we can do with your child so that we don't have to spend $100 on a babysitter, and do something that we don't have to do later. We can do a lunch. We can do something with your kid.
I'll
But
push
a lot
back on
of
that one.
times,
I'll
first
push
dates,
back
they
on.
don't bring
Yo,
their
hold on,
kids.
Alex.
I'll just push back on that one. A lot of people don't want to introduce random people, random strangers into the kid's life. So like if I were in the dating scene right now with my kid, and I don't care who it is, they're not meeting my kid until I've gone through my own personal checklist and assessment of, is this person safe for my child? Is this person going to be good in my
Yeah.
child's life? Is my child ready for that? So that's where I'd push back. But the thing,
Then, yeah.
the thing that I'll say about, like I don't have a problem with a woman saying, if you want to go on a date with me, then, help me cover my child care. Because at the end of the day, you don't have to go on a date with her if that's not okay with you. That it's okay to let that be a deal breaker. We are allowed to set our own boundaries. They're allowed to set their own boundaries. And again, it is an interplay between two people who mutually have to consent to the process. And if they don't have that, then it's not in the cards. It didn't work out, and that's okay.
And again, how prevalent is this? So are we also talking again of, a loud minority again?
It very well
Personally,
could be. Yeah.
I think so.
I've never seen it. And also I haven't really been on dating apps in, 12 plus years, however long it's been. So it's like, I don't know what guys are actually experiencing out there. So like we're talking about somebody we heard on a podcast, right? Just like, oh, I don't do this unless a guy does X, Y, and Z.
to be fair,
Is that really a
I
direct
wanted to
representation?
make it blatantly obvious that was definitely an outlier. I made it poorly, but I guess the point I was trying to make is the demands are getting higher for the same reward is what I'm getting at.
I think it goes back to
You're being held to a standard that the other person isn't holding themselves.
Well, is it you being held to a standard, or the other person adhering to their own standard that they're setting?
The other person's holding you to a standard, but they are not holding themselves to a standard that you have of them, hypothetically speaking. She says you have to be the provider.
Okay.
But feminism has said she doesn't owe you anything as a woman. I'm putting it in the most red-pilled way I can yeah. That's what guys are saying. That's what's creating the red pill. That's what started the rhetoric. Women, like if you ask one of these guys, what are they going to tell you? Women want to do nothing, but they still expect me to be a man. She tells you, again, I'm putting it like super raw. She's saying, I don't have to stay at home I'm not cleaning. I ain't cooking, but he has to go outside, clean the gutters, mow the lawn. He has to protect me. He has to be the provider.
Yeah.
I'm putting it like super like, Al Bundy saying this.
I agree with that.
I do think though that those are few and far between, maybe. Like I again, it goes back to, if you have standards you set for yourself, they have standards they set for themselves. They might be able to find someone who is super rich, doesn't want anything but eye candy.
I want to agree with you, but if the red pill didn't exist, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
I mean,
I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm saying that's what that's what they're saying. That's what's causing them. That's why this movement has gotten so much. That's why we've fucking had this podcast, because Andrew Tate exists.
Yeah. All right. So I wrote this down, and I think this might be a good transition.
Hold on. I think Alex has been trying to say something here.
All right. You, Alex, you go first, and then I wrote down something I had earlier today as like an answer. But I'll do it after you say something, Alex.
Okay, so yeah, I said a couple moments ago, I agree with Ed that this position is something that is, it is along the lines of rhetoric that I've heard from what we would consider the red pill umbrella or the incel umbrella. That said, I do think the dynamic is, it might be based on a few isolated instances or outliers, as Kevin said. I'll speak at least anecdotally. The feminism informed women that I know in my life are certainly not behaving that way. Like the women in my life that I know that are, they're earning more money than their husbands or their partners. They are, they're not the primary caretakers. They are the primary breadwinners. Those people, generally speaking, also do not have the expectations that the men need to go and be the provider. And like, again, it's a mutually agreed upon arrangement between two consenting adults. And like that, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. But I just do want to point out that like basically never in my own experience in my own life, I've never seen women who are feminists or feminism informed actually hold those positions. I'm not saying that you guys haven't personally witnessed that or whatever, but if we're talking social media, as I always go back to, controversy and anything that creates anger is designed to keep you engaged, and that's why you see it, and that it's not representative of real life. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, so that's why I keep asking, like, okay, what's this based off of? Because same thing for me. I have personally never met anybody that fits that description. Personally, out of every female I've known, I mean, maybe one that had tendencies for that, but I just haven't seen it
What
within my own
description are you
family.
talking about?
Well, I mean, what you guys were saying. So the girl that's expecting the guy to provide absolutely everything, or pay the $100 for the babysitter for a date, or pay for the bill. I mean, maybe pay for the bill. I could see that, but I don't think that's so much I think that's more, it comes up to like a chivalry thing, which I guess you could call that a gender role, but
I mean,
which,
100% is general.
yeah, it's 100% a gender role. But I still don't think because she's expecting that, she's also expecting you to be the sole provider. Right. But I think that's just more because it's currently and the way we've been brought up. That's just what guys did and still do when you go on dates. It's kind of the expectation. But that doesn't mean that that girl is going to be the stay-at-home wife that's going to cook or whatnot. She very well could be a well-established doctor, but she still likes to see the guy to pay the bill when you go on a date, right? Is that wrong? I don't know. Who are we to say? But
Well, let's take it this way. If the rhetoric of feminism for equal pay is there, then that's what guys are saying. Again, like a red pillar will tell you, okay, if she wants to make the same amount of money, then why can't she split the bill with me on the first day?
Okay, but that implies that they're doing the same job.
Yeah, that whole dynamic is women assigned the gender role of caretaker, nurturer, so on and so forth, if they're able to work to begin with, because oftentimes they're not able to due to the responsibilities of raising children and so on and so forth falling on them. If they're even able to work, they often end up in job roles that are seen as conforming with their gender roles. So educators, nurses, caretakers, like those types of roles are then also not as highly compensated as the doctors, as the skilled labor, as the what we might typically consider to be more masculine roles. So it's not that, you know, they're not making the same wage in the same job, although there's also that going on. But there's
Well, but
also more broadly, like they're not even getting the same opportunities for the same work, or at least they weren't. And, you know, things have certainly changed, but in the past it was, you know, it was very different.
yeah, but they can still provide, right? So like the way I look at it is, yeah, let's say you have a job that pays a lot less. The way I've done in my relationships, at least, it's I basically come up with a ratio as far as, okay, how much more do I make than this person, and what do I realistically expect them to provide towards, I don't know, a trip, let's say. You know, I don't want to be taken advantage of, right, and be the guy that's always paying for everything. I'm very much a believer that we need to be 100% on both sides, but that's also not fair, kind of to Alex's point, to somebody that's earning less. So I personally have come up with like a ratio. Like, okay, if I make 3 times more than this person, I'm gonna go ahead and split this bill and be 3 times higher than what this person is going to pay. And that's how I've actually
Yeah,
always
that's
done
exactly
it.
the same thing we do at home too.
Yeah. So I make that much more, I will pay this much more. And it's an equal ratio to
Right.
income ratio.
That's what me and Kenzie did. Like when she started off, like she made 1/3 of what I made, and every bill was like 1/3, 2/3. As she has worked up, we are now about the same pay, and now everything's 50-50. Like I feel like that should be like common sense almost.
If you're about the same pay, that means that she's progressed faster than you, and she's gonna far outpace you, and then
100%.
she's gonna
I
be
am
the
okay.
breadwinner. And
I want to be a depender. I'm like, I'll be back. I want her to work.
Dude,
Absolutely.
hey,
think about the
I
hobbies.
I would give anything for a sugar mama. I just got to say
Oh my
that.
God, you have no
I am
idea.
down.
That's like my
I am down.
dream.
And that's the thing. I'm like,
I'm working
why
on mine. I'm working
like-
on mine to get to school.
why are guys so much like,
an
oh, I
investment.
want to be the breadwinner and this is, I'm like, bro, I'm okay with doing the things that I want to do, take care of the kids, be at home. Like, however, I want to preface this before I get canceled. It
Here
is
comes
still a lot
white
of
knight
work.
disclaimer.
It is
Too late.
still a lot of work to be a stay-at-home parent. Okay, I'm not denying that. Okay, just because I'm a stay-at-home parent does not mean that I'm not doing less work. It's just different work.
Okay,
You're
speaking
not
of
barefoot
which,
and pregnant
how-
in the kitchen, so are you really?
Yeah, speaking of which, how do you guys divvy up the? Actually, I guess this one apply to you because you guys both work. In a situation where the man works, woman stays at home,
Yeah.
and they have a child, how do you divvy up the parental responsibilities? So in your case, I guess you're a father, Alex, you as well, but I'm not sure what your spouse does. But is it fair to say that the provider, right, is provided for the family, so he comes home and is expected to not do anything with the house? Or so I'm just kind of asking.
Yeah, that's hard. Go ahead, Alex. You go first on this one.
Yeah, so that one is tricky because, like, so I'll speak briefly to my situation, and then I'll speak on it generally. So I am currently the breadwinner, the sole. Yeah, I'm not going to say the sole income, but I am the primary income, and I did not always used to be. I used to be the one making a fraction of what my partner made, but then just the way that things shook out in our lives, I ended up becoming the primary breadwinner, and part of that was due to my upward mobility with my situation as an electrician, and my earning potential, and also trying to offer the best childhood to our kid, and not being just two parents that are working all the time and having a latchkey kid, a kid that just chills at home or at daycare all the time, because that's just not the experience that we wanted to give them. And it's hard on us because, like, we could be making a shit ton of money if we were both working, but instead we did sacrifice that, and it's a lot harder on us financially. We live in an area that is very financially demanding, not easy to get by if you're not making, like, hell, if you're making six figures, low 100s, and you have a family of four, like, you're still probably struggling. And I don't know how people can get by making less than that with any number of kids. And I know many people who are in that situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, the way that we split up our sort of general duties is, I work primarily. I work my 40 plus hours a week, depending on whenever time is available, and that money covers everything that we have, all of our bills, all of our savings goals, everything comes out of my pool of money. And then when I get home, I am certainly not as active as my partner is in terms of being, the homemaker, if you will. So um, doing the chores around the house to keep the house tidy, clean, so on and so forth. Taking the kid to school, picking up the kid from school. Part of that's because, like, I work 10-hour days. So, like, I leave for work before my kid goes to school and I get home after school's over. So it's just not an option for me. But then on my day off, um, I'm doing dishes, I'm cleaning, I'm vacuuming, I'm doing chores around the house, I'm catching up on projects that need to be done around the house.
Mhm.
I take my kid to school. I pick up my kid from school to give my partner a break. And then on the weekends, we try to split it. I'm usually really tired from my very physically demanding job. So I I would say we're at like 60-40, maybe 40% of taking care of a lot of the domestic responsibilities over the weekend. Because I am recovering to then go on to try to work the next week. So but it's an arrangement that, while not ideal for us, is like, we make it work because we have to. And, my existence is dependent on the wage that I make. I don't own anything else to profit off of, or make extra income from. And and so that's just what our existence is. But it works out for us. And if we need to change it, then we'll sit down and have that discussion and say, well, this isn't working out for X, Y, and Z reasons. Let's flip the script, figure out something else. Um, More generally, I'll just say this. I do think, to the best of your ability as a man, especially in like a sort of traditional, um, you know, one man, one woman, and plus kids situation, even if you are the primary breadwinner, like, I still think you should try to be involved at home.
100%.
If you're both working, then there's no excuse for, like, one of you is doing more domestic work than the other, especially if you're letting that fall on the woman. Because of the ways, again, like, if a woman's expected to have her own full career, but then also be the primary caretaker for the children, be the primary housekeeper, housemaker, then how
Yeah.
can she do that? She is doing more work to be able to progress in her career compared to the man who's being hands off in that situation. And I do not think that's acceptable.
Mm.
That's a situation where it's like, you're both having a rough go of it. But if you did split those duties for domestic responsibilities, like, if you divide it up and you figure out a system where you can spread that work, share the load, share the burden, then everyone will be better for it. And that's what people should strive for, in my opinion.
No, you're Alex. So what you just said there, me and Kenzie struggled at the beginning of our child's life because my head, she works from home. I have to go into work. I'm it's like one of those things that, like, you don't know how much work she's also doing while at home. And even though, yes, I get it, I'm in the military, which is a stressful job. To say that your spouse does not
Fake
have a
job.
stressful job, yeah, no. Say your spouse does not have a stressful job, come home, and then not assist is just disingenuous. I didn't realize that at first. I got in trouble because I was over here. So we had to make a list of chores. Like we had to do a legit chore list of like how much time are we contributing to with each other to the house, taking care of things, taking care of the child, taking care of like good doing work, and like writing it all down. I'm over here thinking like, oh, I finished work. Did the dishes. That was it. She's like, well, did you do this, 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 this? I did this on top of work. I'm like, oh,
Please don't tell me that you did I did the dishes. Let me go do my celebratory video games to decompress.
I don't play video games, but I did something like equivalent.
Something
Do that.
analogous to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I want to
something.
go. I want to go to my podcast with my buddy.
yeah. But no, that's why I had to clean before I came to do the podcast. But it's stuff like that, though. I think a lot of guys, like, it goes back to, oh, I'm the breadwinner. But if your wife is also doing a job, you shouldn't. It doesn't matter if she's making more or less than you. She's still doing a job that is taking a toll on her mental, power
Her
throughout
mental
the
health,
day.
yeah.
Yeah, mental health. So it doesn't matter if she's making less than you. She's still doing a job. And
Well,
so I had go ahead.
Well, so what I was getting at here, so it seems like we're all pretty much in the same understanding that no matter what you're doing, whether you actually have a actual job where you're earning money versus you're just a stay-at-home parent, those are equally the same. At least for me, in my eyes,
Yes.
it's still a job.
Yes. I would say yes.
Okay, so we do agree that if you are the sole provider, that you can't come home and expect to do absolutely nothing because you're the one providing, and the woman should be doing everything.
Correct. And I think there's
So-
a big gaping hole with the traditional roles of the man provides, comes home, takes his shoes off, and fucks off. And it's that
Right.
Yeah.
you're
It's-
still a spouse. You're still a partner. Like
The
even
guys-
if you don't have a house to contribute to, you still have to be an active member of that relationship.
every guy now wants to be the fucking lion doing nothing but fuck all and doing like and that's it. That's all I want to do. Come home, like, I protected, hard work. Let's
Well,
have
yeah,
sex.
like
That's all I want to do.
There's another dynamic at play here too, which, if you haven't been told this by a woman before, that you might not consider as a man. And that's even if, let's say in my situation, I'm doing all of the breadwinning, my partner is doing all of the housekeeping. There's an imbalance in terms of economic.
Silence.
Yeah. So like if I'm the one who's making all of the money, and then by that logic, I'm therefore, I'm the one who's now, due to that cash flow, like I can effectively control the entire life of my partner. And so a lot of women feel trapped. And I think that was, back to the point about World War II, and like women were working and they were finally, for the first time in our society, having the opportunity to engage in productive labor that they then gained economic, like it was effectively a form of short-term economic liberation. They no longer had to depend on a man in order to exist on a day-to-day basis. They could start making their own decisions to a limited degree back then, because as we know, like women couldn't have bank accounts on their own until, was it 1974?
it was like mid 70s, yeah.
Yeah. So like in the lives of all of our mothers, they likely were not able to have a bank account until later into their life. Whereas, women our age, thankfully, were all able to, from birth, basically would be able to have that once they fit the qualifications. But I just think that imbalance of power is really important to consider. So it's like, I don't think it's a one for one. I'm primary breadwinner in terms of money. Partner is primary homemaker. Therefore, we each are doing an equal thing because I still have that power imbalance. And so in order to not leverage that power imbalance and effectively be like the employer for my partner, then I put some effort back into like, I am going to be here to participate in the house making and making sure that everything's taken care of at home in addition to my work. So maybe you could say that, in my situation, maybe I'm doing a little more labor. I don't actually think that's the case, but for the sake of argument, even if I am doing more labor, I think that would have to be part of the cost of like, in communicating to your partner that you are here to take care of them and be with them. Personally, I think in that type of situation, like, I am a big fan of, this amount of money automatically goes to you, and I get no say in that money. And that way it doesn't feel like I am hiring you to do all of this domestic labor. And also I am dangling your continued existence based on how you do at home or whatever. Like, yeah, so a lot of women feel this way. I have spoken with women who feel trapped in their relationships. They are being abused emotionally, psychologically, physically, and they cannot leave because they don't have their own means of, continuing on their own existence.
Yep.
And so I
Yeah.
think as
Well, I think that's why our system exists, where if you walk away, then, alimony and taking half of the assets and stuff like
Well,
that. It's
and
exactly
that's a
protecting
point.
those people.
That's the point that a lot of people that a lot of people that are advocates of traditional marriage love the point about how like, oh, there weren't a lot of divorces back in the day, like things were better. Well, there weren't a lot of divorces back in the day because women were trapped effectively in their marriages. They did not have, to their credit, they did not have a choice. They weren't a full human in our society because they didn't have the agency to own their own damn money.
Right. And I think that's where the red pill community realizes this. They want to be able to control women in that way again, to be able to arguably not have not have the possibility of their spouse walking out on them if they are not doing the work to be a good spouse themselves.
And the red pill community will tell you that women deep inside want that. And I think that's another gaping flaw in that movement. I don't think woman, I don't think anyone
no one wants to feel trapped.
Wants to be under the control or trapped under
not
somebody
trapped,
else.
But I do think some women, they do prefer that lifestyle. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of women are 100% okay with the traditional.
Like when the man is generous and not,
Yes.
abusive.
Of
a lot
course.
of women, I
Of
think
course,
many
And that's
women
fantastic.
want to be part of that dynamic.
And I think that's fantastic. And I think that like I spoke with my wife about this. I'm like, hey, if at some point it makes more sense for you to stay at home and take care of the kids, would you be okay with that? I think she was okay with it. I think it's hard because she's in a very good spot right now, and I want her to stay in there. So we're in like a weird situation where I can't. That's a hard conversation because I think she'll eventually potentially make more money than me. But that's just one of those things that I do think you're right, Kevin. A lot of women are okay with that dynamic. I but I do think a lot of women don't necessarily want to work either. Some women
I
do.
think here's where it's important to like pick a kind partner, because the best judgment of a partner is like when you relinquish power to the other party and how they treat you. So
I agree.
I think that's probably the biggest decision you have to make if you want to go for that kind of lifestyle, is picking the right man. It's a very nuanced conversation.
I think that's a good spot to end this specific discussion about. We've been going for an hour and 30 minutes or so. Bottom line is picking a good partner, a kind partner that you're able to trust. Whatever it is, that you guys want to do with your relationship. Have that conversation. That's the important part, is to have that conversation and find someone that is of equal mindset to you, and don't force your ideologies on others. That's where we get into the slippery slope of this negative sex war of sexes, battle of the sexes, because others think that they want to impart your specific ideology and your specific thought of what a family is on each other. And I think that's where we get into problems. So would anyone else like to have a closing comment before?
Yeah, and then
Okay. Okay. Let's go. I'll go the opposite. Carlos, you start.
yeah, and to add on to that, as far as a solution for the society in general, I don't think we're going to see a fix until I think it's going to take time. It's going to be, I think we're going to have to go through probably 2 or 3 more generations of this slow progression and us trying to figure out this new weird dynamic.
I agree.
But I think overall, as a race, as a human race, we are trending towards everything that we're talking about. And then there's the outliers, the loud, outspoken outliers, and over here. But overall, I think it's going to take a few generations of this being the normal thing, and eventually this isn't even going to be a conversation.
Do you think we're headed towards the right direction? Because they're saying
Yeah.
happiness is declining, marriages are declining, childbirth is declining.
I think.
I mean,
Well, I think
that
that's a different subject.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, I think
economic.
that's a completely separate subject.
You don't
Yeah, I
think
think that's
that's
more economic.
You don't think
Yeah.
the intersexual relationship dynamic has contribution to that at all?
Nope.
I think it
No,
has
I
a
think
contribution.
it's the other way
but
around.
No, but if you look at, let's say, Indian families or Mexican families with traditional values, those statistics are not the same. And we have the same economic
I mean,
conditions.
you could say that about Norway. Norway is like the happiest country in the entire world, and they have a more progressive thought on the family dynamic. Like it all, I think, it has to do with the current situation in the States. Like, I don't think it has anything to do necessarily. Okay, so it's economic and social. I don't think it has anything to do with like actual family traditional values. I think it has everything to do with the fight that we are in America.
You don't think this is the social issue?
I guess it is a social issue, but at the same time, the fight is not happening in the more traditional countries either. The fight is not happening in the more
No, I'm not
progressive
saying
countries.
more traditional countries. I'm saying like Indian families and Mexican families here that has more traditional values, but we're under the same economic conditions. It's not
Yeah,
like
because
we're
their culture is the same. I think it's
right. I'm just saying they have very traditional gender roles, right?
yeah.
Versus, I guess
I mean, we have to ask
modern
Drew
American
if he's
society.
happy. We have to ask Drew if he's happy.
But
Yeah, but all right. Well, let's. I think that might be in the next episode. All right, Kevin. So, all right, Alex, your turn for closing remarks.
Okay, my closing remarks. 1, gender is fake and gay. Act accordingly. 2, this is a quote from African revolutionary Thomas Sankara. This is an excerpt from a quote. There is no true social revolution without the liberation of women. And then my final one, from another famous and or infamous character, depending on your opinion on him, from Mao Zedong, women hold up half the sky. So, yeah, women's liberation is where I say it's at. I think this process of navigating gender, it cannot be a one-sided thing. We have to include women. We can't keep viewing this as this side versus that side. We can't view this as men versus women. We as men have our obligation to talk to other fellow men and get them to understand that women are also their own individual people with their own dreams and ideas and beliefs and imperfections too. We can't pedestalize them. And I think once we start operating within that sort of understanding, instead of treating them as this monolithic whole that we paint in broad strokes, like what the red pill rhetoric does, we have to recognize that women are as infinitely complex and nuanced as we are as men. And we cannot allow ourselves to fall into the monolithic sort of broad strokes stuff as well. We have to assert our individuality as men and make it known that just because I am a man, that does not define what I get to do and what I get to be. And as long as we advocate for ourselves on that basis, we advocate for women on that same basis, I think that is at least a starting point for then overthrowing the capitalist mode of production and liberating everyone from the chains that shackle us all. I'm just kind of joking about that last part, but that's all.
I agree. This
All right, Kevin.
is-
Kevin, your
Was it
turn.
my turn?
Kevin, your turn.
I think we had a really good conversation today. Nobody got heated or angry. I think everybody was respectful. And yeah, I think a lot of stuff is just like common sense. Just like be respectful, be empathetic, be moral. And then because women do a lot of things better than guys, and guys do a lot of things better than women. It's like we're never gonna be the same, but as long as we have like that mutual respect, like it's gonna work out. But the way social media is right now and the algorithms are tailored is kind of pushing us towards off the other edge. So just slow down and try to fight against that and find common ground.
Thanks. Ed, let's close it up.
I've always heard that communication is the most important thing in a relationship, and I disagree a little bit. I think the most important thing that hurts relationships, it's unmet expectations, and I think gender roles play such a big role in that. Communicate, obviously, and set up your own expectations. You're two individuals. You have full agency. Make of it what you want. I make more, but I work more, but I also help more around the house because her work is more physical. So we still find ways to find a healthy balance. Like when she decides to watch football on Sunday, I cook, and my dick hasn't shrank. So yours won't either. So basically, women are going through a tough time right now. They're going through human rights puberty. They're getting, things are changing for them, and it's going to be a messy change. Hang on. And ladies, good for you. We're rooting for you. Don't forget about us. Wave at us every now and then, and say hello and ask us how we're doing. That's it. So I think it's that. I
love that. No, that's great.
I think that's a great analogy, Ed. So
Beautiful.
all right.
Mitch, where's your stupid fucking book? Are we going to read from that?
You want to read something from it? All right. We'll close up with something with my
Oh,
book.
God, he had it ready.
He did have it ready. Oh my God. Mitchell, this was a test.
He's like,
fail.
this all?
Just
This?
I've been trying to find something that would like be great as a final closer.
Next time you do it, Mitch, you have to point at it, but really flex so everyone can see your bulging masculine physique. If you can't tell, by the way, Mitch is fucking jacked. I don't know if anyone watching knows this or listening, but
His
But this is
biceps are named
literally-
Tate and Riarchy.
It's because I buy this shirt from the Baby Gap, and
Mitchell, is that your
Stop
son's shirt?
talking.
You shouldn't be wearing that.
it's actually I got it from in Okinawa, so it's actually an extra large, but yet they have one size is smaller for whatever reason, but that's why it's so small. But yeah. Thanks, bro. I really appreciate the vote of confidence with me looking all jacked and shit. I did some push-ups before coming on here,
That sounds
Not
toxic.
Not actually. It's called TRT.
That's gender affirming care. Doing push-ups to make yourself look bigger. Is
wait.
gender
Are you on
affirming care.
TRT?
No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not. I swear to God. It's all Photoshop, bro. All right. Bro, this is all from yoga Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I get all my protein from my orange popsicle milk.
Get through the fucking book.
Bro. All right,
You need to get some comically small reading glasses that are like extra small on your face, and then you need
The
to,
little
like,
red
flex.
framed ones.
Yep, and then like really flex as you point down into the book to read it.
Read like macho man Randy Savage.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
Alex, I feel like you'd really thrive in musical theater.
Well, that's really sweet. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I meant that as a compliment, and I really appreciate
Quit
that you acknowledged that.
mansplaining.
No,
I
that
thought
was
your
one
voice-
of the things.
Ed, when I first met you, I thought your voice would be deeper.
Oh, oh,
Like Vin Diesel.
oh.
You're
See, I've got him.
Aggressive
I got him.
compliments.
I got him, boys.
Oh,
Wave the
wait.
white flag.
I do have a male ego. What the fuck? There it was.
Woo. All right. On that note, we clearly realize that Ed is a toxic man.
Yo, I'm just here playing the red pill devil's advocate. Sometimes I did too good of a job.
Yeah. All right. Hey, if you all made this far, hit that like, follow, share button.
Like and subscribe.
Send us a comment. If you'd like to hear any other topic in a future episode that we would like to expand on, let us know. We would be happy to hear from you. And on that note, see y'all next time.
Sayonara, bitches.
Peace. And cut.